if we haven't met yet, I'm Keith, the founder of VentureFizz. As you probably know, we're a website that's focused on the tech industry, largely Boston and New York. We have a product management community. We help people find jobs. So we do a lot of things. But one of the things that I've been very curious about is career coaching. So if you think about it, some of the best professional athletes out there have their own coach outside of the umbrella of what the team provides. I think of Tom Brady. He always had people helping him, whether if it was his quarterback coach that was separate from the Patriots, to his trainers and his nutritionists and what became TB12 and all these things. He was always hyper obsessed about being the best he could be. And that was all outside of what the Patriots provided him. So there's lots of other athlete examples that do the same. So why, as professionals that are trying to be the best at our industry and field, why aren't we working with professional coaches? So I have two insanely amazing speakers today. So I have Matthew Mamet and Ravi Mehta. So both of these individuals I've had the luxury of knowing for many, many years. But to kind of set the stage, Matthew and I go back to, I don't know, I'm not even going to say how long, but there was a company called Permission TV is when we first got to know each other. And from there, you had great product leadership roles from TripAdvisor, EverQuote, EnergySage. And then Ravi, I got to know you when you were at TripAdvisor too, and you've gone on to do amazing things at Facebook, Tinder, Reforge. So I'm going to let the two of you just give a quick little, beyond what I just shared, kind of your backgrounds, what you've done, and then we'll go into the conversation from there. Matthew, I'll let you start.
Sure. Thanks, Keith. I'm really excited to be here, talking to you and Ravi as well. I was thinking like this is my chance to be on the big stage now with the big kids. But yeah, I've been doing product and growth work for a number of years, a number of decades. From that experience at TripAdvisor, building and launching their e-commerce for hotels platform, as well as at EverQuote, building and launching an online insurance marketplace. And just getting old, I've seen a lot. And as a result of that experience, there comes pattern recognition. And I've benefited from having a coach, and I've benefited from being a coach. So I'm really excited here to talk a little bit more about that.
All right, Ravi, when we met, you were in Boston, but now you're on the West Coast. So share the details of what you've been up to.
Yeah, sounds good. So now I'm based in LA, but spent most of my life in Boston. Matthew and I actually worked together for about 5 years at TripAdvisor. Um, I've been a product leader throughout my career. I got my start at Microsoft, where I was a product manager, one of the early folks, first 20 or so folks on the Xbox team. And throughout my career since then, I've been focused primarily on consumer product management and product leadership. I helped build the consumer product team at TripAdvisor. That was my first opportunity to work with a coach, and I found it so incredibly valuable. There was a coach that worked with a number of us at TripAdvisor who's fantastic, and it really opened my eyes to how powerful a relationship that can be. And so a few years ago in 2021, I actually started a company called Outpace, focused on making it easier for people to find a coach. We ran that for about 2 years, had some really good experiences, worked with hundreds of folks to help them find the right coach and to work with the coach in the way that they were going to get the most value from it. And then since then, I've both been a coach, I've had coaching. It's been a key part of my life. Today, I'm a full-time product advisor. So I work with companies on more of a fractional basis to help them with product strategy, to help them build out their product team, to help them think about growth, think about AI, how to work in an AI native way. I do a lot from an education standpoint. So I work with Reforge. I help them launch their product strategy class. I help them create their product leadership class. I help them create their AI strategy class, which we're about to run our second cohort in a week or so. So I've been very focused on growth, both for myself and then helping other people grow. It's a passion of mine, and I think as I look back on my career, the folks that I've worked with, like Matthew and others, seeing where they are today is one of the most fulfilling things, knowing that played a small part in part of their career and helping them understand where they want to go and get there.
And I just got to give a plug. So Ravi, he's got a brand too. He's part of Lenny's spin-off podcast hosted by Claire Vu, How I AI. So he recently made an appearance on that. So check out that episode. It's amazing. So all right. So Matthew, uh, wow, a coach sounds amazing, but what do they actually do? Like I could kind of picture what maybe an athletic coach does, but what's a professional coach do?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, just kind of continuing on what you were saying at the top about the different types of people that surround some of these athletes, there are different types of coaches as well, ranging from things like executive coaching to help leaders operate at larger scale, take what they know and bring that to a larger organization or a wider remit within the organization. There are career coaches, folks who will be laser focused on helping you navigate the arc of your career from company to company and role to role. There's like functional coaches, for example, like a product manager coach who can help you build the craft that you have, or a sales coach can help you build your craft. And then there are like life coaches, right? So these are folks who take a whole look at your life, professional, personal, and help you, kind of work on the whole person. So I think those are just some examples of different types of coaches that I've come across, and it's really important to understand what it is that you're seeking and what it is that you want to work on as you think about trying to find some help to get there.
Ravi, how is this different than like, oh, I have mentors for me in VentureFizz. Like, how is this different in that regard?
Yeah, I think it's different in a key way, which is it's the only relationship, the only professional relationship that you have that is not pressurized in some way. And so every single other person that you're working with, there's some backdrop to that relationship that adds a little bit of pressure to it. You could get advice and coaching from your boss, and sometimes the best advice and coaching you'll get is from your manager. But of course, that's through the lens of they're also evaluating your performance. You can get advice and coaching from your peers, but you don't want to take too much from your peers and feel like it's not a co-equal relationship. And it's the same with mentors. If you have a mentor, that can be an amazing relationship. But it's also a relationship where you're sort of depending on them to volunteer their time to help you. And sometimes that's great. Sometimes you might feel like, oh, I'm taking too much from this. And I should be giving back as a mentee to make sure my mentor is getting a lot out of this as well. A coach is completely devoid of that pressure. It's a relationship that exists solely for you. It's a relationship where you can be as candid as you need to be to get unfettered advice and guidance and to understand the questions that you should be asking of yourself. And in that way, it's really unique and I think special. And I encourage people to think about their coaching relationship like that. This is a service that you're paying for. It is for you. Use it in that way. Don't worry at all about, judgment or hold anything back. The best coaching relationships are when you can communicate as freely as possible. When you're working with a great coach, you can take that, help you ask the right questions, help give you the right guidance, and get you to a conclusion that you just couldn't get without having that really kind of true, authentic, and perfectly candid relationship.
And when I think of the mentors that I am grateful to be working with, there's not always the consistency, and it's my fault. I'm sure if I asked them
True.
for their
Yeah.
time, they'd be happy to help, but it's not like we have a ongoing, recurring, in the weeds conversation. The conversation's usually like, let me share the weeds at a high level because we only have so much time, and then we'll get into some action items afterwards with some great advice, but it's not that consistency. So Matthew, how is coaching different than, is it like an opportunity to vent in like a therapy session?
Yeah, no, no, it's not. So, I think the sometimes people come to coaching for different needs, and there's a mismatch in expectations. And I think Ravi really nailed it on the head on what's the difference between coaching and mentoring, for example. I might just throw in one little extra thing that a mentor will probably mostly focus on what they've done, right? So looking at what you're facing right now, here's what's worked for me or what didn't work for me. Whereas a coach will try to elevate the conversation a little bit more and help you build a muscle so that you can solve those challenges or overcome those challenges. So in some ways, um, not some ways, in many ways, working with a coach it's work. Uh, you know, I'll continue the analogy of that you raised about athletic coaches. Sometimes you don't want to get up on the treadmill. And an athletic coach is going to say, well, we're running today, so let's get up there and build that muscle. And I think that's another key difference from something like therapy, which I think some people can be gravitated or think they're interested in coaching because they have a lot on their mind that they want to unpack in the professional setting. But that's really not what a coach is going to do. We're not going to focus too much on um, the past. We're going to be focused on understanding how we got here, sure, but then we want to build a plan to act and move forward. So, oftentimes, you know, folks who are kind of looking for that venting session, sure, your coach can do that from time to time if needed. But if coaching becomes a venting session and a desire to get the answer from the coach, just tell me what the answer is, then I think those are relationships that I've seen that don't succeed as well as folks who are coming into it with an open mind to build some new muscles and to get outside their comfort zone in a safe way. And I would agree with Ravi that trust and safety is pretty important.
Yeah. So what about time frame of when someone should engage with this potential path of working with a professional coach? Um, I mean, I guess not to harp on the athletic analogy, but I think it is a perfect analogy. I mean, I would think if I get drafted by an NFL team or even in college, you probably should have, like if you're trying to be the best you can be. Um, I mean, even in high school, it's like, if you're trying to specialize in a specific sport, lots of people have a structure where it's not just their high school coaches that are teaching them. So when is the right time to start thinking about working with a professional coach?
I think it could be as early in your career as you want it to be. As soon as you feel like you could use a little bit of help, or there's some things that you don't quite understand how to approach, and you need some help reflecting on that and putting together a plan, that's a great time, right? From a athletic standpoint, people start working with coaches in Little League, right? Right from the first time you start to play, you have a coach. It shouldn't be any different in the professional arena. I think the reason it has been is coaching has this reputation as being really expensive, and because it's really expensive, you need your company to pay for it, and your company's only going to pay for it when you're senior enough to warrant it. But to some extent, you could argue that the folks that are super senior in the organization, they don't actually need coaching. They've been able to figure things out on their own. So I'm a big advocate for um, working with a coach as soon as you feel like you're ready. I think to Matthew's point, you have to be ready. You have to be willing to put in the work. You have to want it. And now there's great coaches who will work directly with folks who are, it is an investment, right? It's still going to cost money. I think that's one of the reasons that it makes it different than mentorship and actually makes it uniquely valuable. But for folks that have been through it, there's something like a 95% satisfaction rate with coaching. People reflect on it like, this is the best money I've ever spent. Like I might have spent X thousands of dollars, and it's given me one, a sense of mastery. It's also helped me get the promotions that I wanted or the raises that I wanted. And so it really does have an ROI, especially if you can work with find the right person and have the right things that you want to work through. So I'm a big advocate of get coaching as early as you can, as early as you're ready for it. It's not something that you have to wait until you're a senior leader or executive for.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that and add in that there are also moments in time throughout your career that lend itself to the process of going out and finding a coach. Um, uh, when you're when you've stepped up to a role and in a level in the organization that you've never seen before, that's a very common moment to be thinking about coaching. Uh, it is not, unfortunately, it is not uncommon for organizations to promote first and then figure things out later. And you are now in the hot seat, and you're kind of a little bit left with yeah, figuring things out on your own, as Ravi mentioned, and that's not a great feeling. So when you're promoted, when you know your scope shifts, when you go from individual contributor to manager, that's another moment. When you go from managing a single level of the organization to multiple levels of the organization, these are all examples of a scope shift where it might be a good time to be thinking about supporting that shift with things, and coaching can be one of those things. Starting a new job, that's a great time to ask for a coach. We're at a point where we're negotiating an offer, for example. Uh, we can think of like, hey, I'm really excited to join this company. I would like to negotiate. Everyone tells you that that's an important thing to do. This is not a negotiation seminar, but uh, saying, hey, I'm stepping into a new role at a new company, maybe at a higher level. I'd like to continue to work with a coach. I think that's probably one of the best times when all incentives are aligned between the business, the person, to get a coach. So I would say there's probably some times where they're not a good time to look for a coach. So if you're if you're in a position where you feel like you have like low job security for whatever reason, then maybe the company's not doing well, and reductions in workforce are happening. You're not getting along very well with your team or your manager, and you might be thinking about time to move on. That's probably not a great time to throw a Hail Mary to a coach and see if you can like fix all the things. Mostly because coaching takes time. We don't start running a marathon on day one. And so we may not have the time to really work on anything before those scenarios kind of played through their course.
And I don't know if you guys, I probably should have looked this up ahead of time, but there's a professional coach on the West Coast that's like this luminary that like was a coach to Steve Jobs and all the big, Silicon Valley names. Like those individuals le leverage this resource, and they, you would think, didn't need it, but they saw the potential. And I just think when you expect people to take on more responsibility, some people might just naturally be able to handle it, but a lot of people got to figure it out. And you're either going to learn that on the job or you can work with somebody to help you stretch yourself and get better at it instead of just being thrown into the fire and expecting to
Yeah.
to survive.
I do recall that luminary on the West Coast. There's a great book about him called The $1 Trillion Coach. And encourage everyone to read it. Uh, if we could all have a person like that in our back pocket, we would all be very successful. And I think democratizing coaching, which is something that I know Ravi's very passionate about, is absolutely worthwhile.
Bill Campbell. Good
Yeah,
call,
Bill.
Matt. So I'll put that in the chat here. Um, yeah, so, I mean, because when I think of coaching, it should be like, hey, I'm looking to continue to get better. It's not like a fix if I'm frustrated at work or I'm not getting that promotion. Maybe the coach is the quick fix, right? This is like talk about the expectation over the long term.
Yeah, I don't think it's a quick fix. Um, the the initial thing that I think is a breakthrough for a lot of people is stepping outside the situation. And that can be good whether the situation is challenging or whether it's really positive. Like sometimes if you're in a really challenging situation, if you have very limited job security and you may not have a role in 2 or 3 months, it's hard to get coaching and turn that around. But if your spidey sense is going off and you're in a situation you don't feel like you're getting the credit that you deserve, you don't feel like you understand kind of the mechanics of how decisions are made, and you need some help, coaching is great for that because that coach can come in through questions that they're asking, through alternative perspectives that they're providing, help you step out of the situation. One of the reasons that athletes use coaches is like Tiger Woods can't see his own swing, right? At the end of the day, he might be an incredible golfer, but he needs an outside perspective to understand where he can do better. And it's the same thing professionally. In some ways, I think even more so because a lot of times the political dynamics, the interpersonal stuff can feel invisible until you start to probe and ask the right questions and get a sense of, okay, here's a person with who I have a relationship with that might be frayed, or here's what this other person who seems to be moving in a different direction is solving for. And that's good both for when you're in a challenging situation or when you're in an opportunity rich situation. So if you've just been promoted to a new role or you have a new team or you've taken on a broader scope of responsibility, you might come into that with the perspective that you've already had, that you've always had, which might not be the right level of scope for the new role that you have. Or, oftentimes what happens is people get promoted and there's an unsaid change in expectations. The thing that made you an all-star performer last year, your manager, other leaders in the organization now, because you've gotten promoted, have invisibly changed the goalposts and they have these much higher expectations of you as a result. And it can be hard to see that when you're in it. When you're working with a coach, they can paint the picture of, okay, you're now at a different level in the organization. You're engaging with different people. You're working on different projects with different level of spotlight within the org. Let's start to think about what the expectations might be and how you can suss those out to make sure that you are playing by the rule book that applies to you right now versus the rule book that got you to where you are. So I think in both the cases where you're in an opportunity rich situation or you might be in a challenging situation, that ability to see outside yourself to come in with a different perspective is incredibly valuable. And coaching does take time, but even, with that, there can often be very quick wins that you can get, where you can start to see the value and then build on it in a compounding way.
Yeah, I think something, Ravi, that you said that really resonated with me was how the rules change on you and they're somewhat hidden or opaque. And it creates a feeling of psychological like not being safe for whatever reason. The ground is kind of shaky underneath your feet and you're not sure why. Especially if you have been on such solid ground and being able to replicate your success over and over. And it's thinking about it from the other perspective of the executives or the leaders who have already arrived at that state. I mean, I think for folks who have been in those kinds of rooms, it's sometimes difficult to get 12 executives to agree on a plan. I mean, not Ravi and I, when we worked together, we always saw eye to eye on everything. Um, but w- when you're working at that level of a much higher level of combining strategy and tactics and different points of view and different functional areas, it is important to have folks in the room who can play that game well. Not to say that we all have to agree and we need yes people because that's not what it is. But there are some certain rules of operating at that level. And that group can be insular and keep you out if you're not playing by those rules, even if you have great ideas, even if you deserve to be there. But it's just this unwritten set of rules of how we play this game that need to be exposed.
Well, Ravi, the question that you brought up that I was thinking about all along leading up to this event was the financial piece. So I think a lot of the reasons why coaching hasn't become more accessible is the fact that it is expensive and um, it's something that would come out of a personal budget would be a tough thing to do. So what about having a company support this and have a budget to pay for it? How do you approach that?
I think the first step is so there might be official programs at your company, which is great. If there are, take advantage of them. The next step is to ask your boss or ask your HR rep and say, hey, this is something, I want to have the biggest impact here possible. This is something I've been thinking about for myself. Is it possible to get expenses covered? The worst you're going to hear is no. And that's not a bad no. It's actually, you just said, hey, I want to have an even bigger impact here. So that's never a bad thing. It's not like you're asking for something entirely for yourself. Sometimes you'll hear, surprisingly, that they're willing to cover it. And sometimes you can meet somewhere in the middle and you can say, okay, I'll pay half, you pay half. corporations like that because then they know, a lot of times when they even about the dollars, it's really about, is a person committed to this? Is this money that we're going to spend that's going to have a high ROI? So I always recommend talking internally first, asking the question. The question actually reflects positively on you rather than negatively on you, even if the answer has to be no for various internal reasons. And then if you feel like you really do need the support, it's okay to pay out of pocket around this. I think in that case, it's helpful to sort of figure out how much you're comfortable with, and just know that that's something that you're investing in yourself and be okay with it. I think when people are paying out of pocket and it's on the edge of what they feel comfortable with, then it does actually pressurize coaching. Every time you go into a coaching session, you're like, how do I get my money's worth out of it? And that's counterproductive. So find something that's comfortable and then find a coach who you really resonate with, and you feel great about, and you feel like time spent with them. You're not even worried about the cost because it's so valuable. And it used to be that the only people doing executive coaching were people that were also themselves pretty senior. This was maybe the final chapter in their career and rates were really high. Now there's a lot more people across very different levels of seniority that have come into coaching. It's not the case that the best coaches have always had the most senior roles. In fact, there's people that are earlier in their career that just have a gift for this. They know how to ask the right questions. They know how to understand situations. They know how to help you in particular. So there are great coaches available no matter what your budget is. And the most important thing is to, um, one, try to get your company cover it. Two, figure out what costs you're really comfortable with. And three, find someone that you resonate with where the cost kind of becomes secondary because the relationship is so valuable for you. And if it's not valuable, that's okay, right? Like if you're ultimately working with a coach and you didn't get what you needed out of it, it's not you. You can always stop. You can work with someone later, pick a different person. That's totally okay. It's up to that coach to prove their value to you.
And I mean, I would have no, like, I've never explored this. So like, what should someone expect because I would think like any profession, let's say like a lawyer, right? The billable hours for a junior associate is X. The partners is A through Z are expensive, right? So how do you figure out like what is the expectation around the cost?
It does vary. I think it's anywhere from like $100 an hour on the low end to a lot of the executive coaches will charge $1,000 an hour, or they'll do some monthly retainer around that. I think if you can spend $1,000 a month, and maybe know that you can do that for 3 months or 6 months, that's a really good starting point where it opens you up to a lot of great coaches. It's enough that it can make a difference. It's enough time that you're going to have an opportunity to work with someone for long enough that you build a relationship, you start to see the results that you want. And then in the grand scheme of things, like that's typically single digits of what a person is making annually. And if you can, improve your productivity, improve your happiness, get the raise, get the 10% raise instead of the 5% raise, it'll pay for itself really quickly.
Matthew, so we were talking about how do you ask for it? How do you get the company to hopefully pay for it? Robbie shared some great advice, and whether if it's they have the budget or maybe you split it so there's skin in the game from both parties, which I think is really smart. But what advice would you have there? Because that's kind of like the big piece of this is, who's paying for this?
Yeah, it is a big piece, and sorry that my power went out there, and I'm sure Ravi has probably already covered all of the most important parts, but sorry if I'm going to repeat some of the things he just said. Um, and it is important though, right? Keith, you hit the nail on the head that folks are uncertain and oftentimes don't allow themselves the ability to even ask for such a thing. Uh, and a lot of that is related to imposter syndrome, which can also be driven by this feeling of the ground being uncertain because the goalposts have changed. So it is somewhat a vicious circle. And what I always tell folks is, quite simply, link it to the business, right? So we all want the business to be successful. We have all agreed that so and so should take on more bigger organization or a bigger strategy or a bigger part of the business. If and so as a result of that, I want to de-risk this situation by getting a coach. So our shared goals and the business's shared goals of happy, healthy teams that are operating on all cylinders and driving value for the organization, that's what I'm all about. And I think I could use some help. So linking it to business goals, we talked a little bit already about asking at the right time. So if you're doing this on the heels of a promotion, I think that's a great time. Sometimes timing is everything. Um, and then I think as I was dialing in, I heard Robbie talking about how it's easy to make it easy for folks to say yes, right? So some of those arrangements um, that can work include, the shared cost, make it about a pilot. I think a great coach uh, should be able to show some inflection point or positive signs within 2 to 3 months. Um, and it and everyone deserves a great coach. Everyone should be holding that bar really high. We're not getting coaches to be the same, right? We're getting coaches to show results. And if you're willing to put in the work, a great coach should be able to show something positive. You together, you should be able to show something positive within the first few months. So frame it as a pilot. And if all of those things are working well, then it gets really easy to say yes. And then, another tip I'll always throw out there is to involve other folks. Sometimes it can feel like this is a conversation between you and your manager, who, as we already talked about earlier in the call, there's a power dynamic there, and so that can make this kind of conversation even more difficult. But there are tons of programs and opportunities that generally come out of HR that you may not already be aware of. Things like professional development, um, things like coaching. I can speak from personal experience. I weaseled my way into the TripAdvisor coaching pool because I learned that it existed, and so I went and learned more about it and asked. Um, and and so I think those are just some more tactical tips for how you have this conversation. And what I always tell folks is there's nothing bad that can come of it. The worst thing that can possibly come of a conversation like this with your manager or HR is they can say, sorry, we're not gonna share the cost at all for a coach. And everyone in the organization who you talk to about this now knows you're someone who wants to succeed, to drive business success, and is thinking of putting in extra effort and work in order to be great at your job. So if that's the worst thing that can come from a conversation like that, you're doing all right. And so I would encourage folks to have a plan, be intentional about the ask, and make it.
So how do you go about finding and determining who is the right coach? Like, is it important to have the person specialized in your line of work? There's obviously the chemistry component, but like, what are the types of ways of vetting out a coach or finding and identifying somebody?
I think the first step is to ask people that you know. It's best to find someone that you're connected to. Um, you'll, you actually will find as you ask people that they'll either, have, use coaching themselves and they've never talked about it, or they might know people who know people. That connection is really important. It's good to have sort of like a, built-in reference for the person that you'd be working with. Um, I think a second thing is once you have a set of folks, look at their online presence, look at what they've written. I think there's very few great coaches that I've met that don't have some online presence, that aren't trying to share their knowledge and their approaches with the world. And if that thought leadership resonates with you, that's a great sign. Um, I think the third thing is to meet with a handful of coaches. I'd suggest meet with three. Do half an hour, 45-minute sessions. Um, Coaches should be willing to do that to get to know you, because actually it's a fit thing, right? They want to make sure they gel with you and you gel with them, and that it's a very personal thing for the coach as well as for you. And coaches want to work with folks that they'll enjoy working with and where they can feel like they can really make a difference. So that face-to-face session is important. They should be willing to do a 30-minute to 60-minute session with you before you commit to anything. If they're not, I think that's a red flag. And then you should come out of that session feeling like, wow, I really found this person, their advice and their perspective valuable. I enjoyed speaking with them. I felt like I could be honest and authentic with them. And I think for myself, when I'm doing a first meeting with someone, I try to get at least one unlock during the session, something that was a pattern of behavior or a way of thinking that they're now starting to think differently about. And so, as someone who's looking for a coach, look for that. Who's helped you? If you spend 45 minutes with someone and you leave with a slightly different perspective or a new way of thinking, that's amazing, right? That's the start of a great coaching relationship. If on the other hand, you hear a lot about what their work and who they worked with, and they didn't really help you in any meaningful way during the 30 to 45 minutes, then like you don't have any sort of evidence that they're going to be able to help you past that. So try to get introductions. There's also good lists, good curated lists, especially for product folks. Lenny has a list. Marty Kagan has a list. Uh, Look at their online presence, see if you resonate with that, and talk to at least three of them. And evaluate how you feel immediately after the session, whether or not you felt like it was helpful.
Yeah, like
I want to
I
I
mean,
want to underscore the first
yeah,
thing
go
Robbie
ahead.
said and the last thing in that question. So the first thing being referrals are everything. Bill Campbell, we don't even really know his name, and he liked it that way. The preface of the book involves a story of like he wouldn't even allow that book to be published while he was alive. They had to wait until his passing before um, they could talk about it. And the they here is the co-founders and CEOs and leaders of the FANG companies. So referrals, referrals, referrals. You would be surprised at how many folks have gone through this process but just haven't talked about it, and they would gladly share referrals. And then the last thing is trust your judgment, right? So at the end of the first conversation, can maybe a quick question to ask yourself about your judgment and your gut is when you see that person's face come over the Zoom for the next call, are you going to say, "Oh, I got to do this meeting now," or are you going to say, "Oh my God, it's Ravi"? Like, yes, yes, I'm so looking forward to this. I think that emotional response is the sum of all of those factors that Ravi described, from fit to a feeling of optimism, like this is going to work because they have unlocked some things for me, and I'm ready. I'm ready to jump up on the treadmill and have another session. So, uh, simply asking yourself that question can really go a long way, I think.
So Matthew, once you identify a coach, you're like, okay, let's get started here. So how do you even get started? Like, how do you optimize that value from these sessions, and what can someone expect kind of kicking things off?
It can be hard to find the groove. Oftentimes, a coaching engagement involves an hour on the Zoom on a Zoom for a week, or every 2 weeks, or even more. And so that time needs to be treated as pure gold, right? And so uh, moving the time, skipping the time, letting the kind of the pressures of the day to day overwhelm that time is not a great way to get started. Um, Moving right from your previous meeting into a coaching meeting can also put your mind space in the wrong spot. So, giving some time for prep. I would prefer for folks to prep 24 hours in advance. So take some time, at least the day before, to work through what's on your mind, to write up your thoughts around what's working, what's not working, send that over. And so not only is it helping ground the conversation, but it's really helping accelerate the work. And so some of the things, another pitfall to avoid is spending 30 minutes updating your coach on what happened over the past 2 weeks when that could just be written down. So I think those are some common things. Be prepared to do some homework. Um, that homework over time should be given to you by the coach. Like, here are some things I want you to focus on or do differently, or some exercises. Prepare for your session. Go into that session with no distractions, and in a great mind space, and then be ready to do some post call work as well, reflection and post call work. So those are some of the tactics on how a relationship like structurally can go to get the most out of it.
Anything you'd add there, Ravi?
Yeah, I would add like if you feel like you don't have time for this, it's probably not the right setup. Either it's not the right coach or you're not in the right headspace. If you, on the other hand, you feel like I don't have time not to do this, like I have to do this because it's the thing that's going to make me more effective this week and get more things done, then it's a really good relationship and the right setup. And I've had both. Like I've had relationships with the coaches where I can't wait for the coaching session that week. And I know coming out of it, I'll have 100 ideas and I'll feel a load off. I'll also feel really energized. And I've had coaches where I'm like, I see it on my calendar. I'm like, this is really not the thing I want to spend an hour on today. And yeah, that's a function of a lot of things. But at the end of the day, the coaching relationship is 100% for you. And so if it's not working for you, that's not on you, right? That's, make sure you're working with someone who you feel like you're getting a huge ROI from.
Ravi, as an extension of that, like how do you know if it's working? Like, are there like metrics and things that you can, more quantitative pieces, qualitative? Like, how do you know if it's working?
I think there's three pieces, all equally valid. The first one is it feels like it's working, right? If you feel more masterful, more prepared, more able to get things done and to navigate the situation, regardless of whether or not there's like objective evidence to the case, if you subjectively feel like it's working, it's working. Um, Number two is feedback, right? If you're getting good feedback from your boss or from other peers, that's that feedback loop is really important. And it shows that you are showing up in a different way within the organization and that you're making progress. And then the third thing is there can be objective measures that help you understand, are you making progress? It could be hitting your OKRs. It could be getting the promotion that you've been aiming for. Could be a really successful product launch or something like that. So those three things I think help you triangulate, is this working? Subjectively, it should feel like it's working. You should be hearing feedback from your boss and from others that confirm that it's working. And then eventually that should show up in objective results that you can measure.
And Matthew, I'm going to let you add to that, but so I'm kind of like moderating this like it was a Zoom webinar. So if anyone has any questions, just put them in the comment section. That way I'll field them, and that way it'll be easier. Matthew, like how do I know if we start working together, like how am I going to measure the ROI? And in addition, what do companies expect if they are kind of partly paying for it or fully paying for it?
Right. Yeah. I think Ravi kind of outlined the measures of success really well. I'd only be repeating them, but I might say that some of the forms of feedback that you can ask for are things like 360 reviews. So it's less around performance feedback, which is, I think, in an ideal world, separate from your coaching feedback, and more around a, a tool called a 360 feedback, which is a thing, and HR kind of knows all about it, and that helps you solicit feedback up, down, and side to side in a way that is detailed and helpful. So less of like you're scoring 3 out of 5 on a scale of 5, and more of your communication style is resonating with these pockets of the people that you interact with, but not with these other folks. So consider a different communication style for those types of stakeholders. So I find 360 feedback to be like a pre and a post is an effective way of putting some measurement around some of the things that often are subjective. And from the company perspective, one of the things that I think is sometimes um, uh, unknown to folks, and certainly to me, anyways, it was unknown until I was in the seat. Is as you move up the organization, results matter more and more, and happy, healthy teams are less and less of what is discussed because it is assumed and understood that you're a positive force for leading and creating happy, healthy teams. And so when a person is struggling to hit their objectives, which involve multiple people or influence or buy-in up, down, and side to side, or worse, doing things in an unknown, kind of like ignorant or naive about, like, I'm actually destructive to this conversation in my attempt to help. That keeps the whole organization from meeting those business objectives. So sometimes what the manager and the business wants is all of these problems that are getting in the way of doing the job, I want them to go away. Um, it's not often that someone will give you a thumbs up because you're doing a great job and you're a great person. And it's even less common that they'll do that to your manager. Hey, I just want to let you know, like, Keith's doing a great job, and I really like working with him. And he's got a lot on his shoulders, but he's doing good. That's not going to happen. But what does happen is someone will go to the manager and say, Matthew's really not, performing the way that's right for me and my team. So zero, indication of anything off on the kind of team and morale side. And then yes, a ability to get more things done so that they can rise to their next level. Because at the end of the day, many people are looking for their next step. And if you are a director reporting to a VP, they may be eyeing a C-level position. And so they want lieutenants or trusted resources on their team that they can take big parts of their job to and hand them down to you. So, long story made short, a pipeline of succession planning and leadership development is another thing that folks are looking for. If you can become a great leader, awesome. If you can create great leaders further down the line, that's really what they're looking for. And sometimes a coach can help you get there.
Yeah. Well, Kristen, thanks so much for your comment here. So she goes, I found an executive coach to be amazing, critical at a time when I was stuck, plateaued in my career. Was fortunate enough to have an amazing boss who somehow identified what was holding me back and suggested an executive coach. The company was willing to invest. The company and I got a clear return on investment. I essentially created OKRs with my boss to assess the value of the coaching. Well, it would be different at the end of the quarter, but certainly more subjective than OKRs. So that's awesome. Great, great testimonial there. All right. Can you talk about the push-pull dynamic of working with a coach? What's the balance like between asking a coach for help with a specific issue versus expecting the coach set a longer-term goal and helping you achieve it? Yeah, so that makes sense. So it's like you've got these short-term goals, but then you get the longer-term vision of where you're hopefully heading. So how do you handle those dynamics of the short versus long term?
From my perspective, I think it somewhat depends on where you're at. If you have a very clear perspective on what you need to accomplish, and that might be something from your own self-assessment, it could be something that you're hearing from your manager or other 360 feedback, um, then maybe the right thing is to get someone to help you with that specific issue because you have a clear direction. If on the other hand, you've got this spidey sense that something's not right, but you're not quite sure what it is, then it's good to spend time with your coach doing a diagnostic, and then your coach through the conversations with you will be able to help you figure out, okay, here's the things that I'm seeing, and here's a goal to focus on. I think so. I prefer doing it like that, where it is somewhat dependent on where you're at with respect to the problems that you feel like need to be solved. Other coaches are a little bit different. Other coaches might have, a particular specialization, and so they've got to, just by default working with them, you're going to be working on time management or something like that, or you might be working on managing up. Um, Other coaches are more Socratic, and so, they're focused on reflection and asking the right questions. Others are more experiential. If you go to a product coach and you're a product manager, they're going to bring their experience to bear. And so I think answering this push-pull question is partly taking stock of kind of where you're at, how much of an understanding you have of the problems that need to be solved, and then looking for the right coach in light of that, and then working with them in that way. And it may change over your coaching engagement, and that may be totally clear. You might say, okay, I want to make progress on this one specific thing. Now that we feel like we've made progress, and through getting to know your coach, they may say, okay, here's some other things to work on. So I think about the push-pull dynamic as somewhat organic and should be driven by you in terms of your understanding of what needs to get solved, or your understanding that you need to do some discovery around that.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and I think there's three broad categories or stages of that you can think of as where you are. Category one or stage one being I'm in the role, and I'm feeling like I'm kind of right up the water line is right up to here, and so uh, those are times when um, you're needing a little bit of help in a more maybe time sensitive way to address an issue in front of you. Um, and your coach should help you, kind of reduce that water line, um, while at the same time helping you understand what your longer term objectives might want to be and kind of pulling that out of you as a theme. Stage two is we're operating right, where I think we should be for the level in the org that I'm in. And now I think those are times when your coach or a coach that is more Socratic starts to become more valuable to you because you are now shining your headlights a little bit further down the road. And then the third stage is the one that we all aspire to, and sometimes we get there, and sometimes we only get there for a little bit, and then we flip back to a different stage. But that third stage is everything is running great. You have a team that's just crushing it, and you don't really have much to do. You're now thinking about either switching to a different department and starting all over again and replicating your success and your leader's success, or different, graduating to the next level. So at that point, your coach should really be helping you think about where you want to be in 5 years and what your goals might look like there, so that you can go from that stage to minimizing the amount of time in stage one. That's always an uncomfortable time.
So the most professions, there's like a credentials that the person may gain because no one graduates with a degree in coaching, right? So someone develops this over time, but there are like certifications. So the question is, what should you expect your coach to be certified? Are there different, the examples that they have here is like professional certified coach, a PCC, if that's a thing, a master certified coach, MCC. I don't know how well known these certifications are, but is that a thing?
There's many certifications in my experience. There's no one single one that really stands out as the one to get. I think I don't have the certification. I've been able to do a great job. I've not looked for that as a prerequisite in the coaches that I've worked with when I'm the coachee. So I think it's a little less important. And one of the traps that I think we talked about a little bit earlier to look out for is someone who is, got a lot of these accreditations, and when you get on the line with them, they're not really giving you that one unlock really fast, and they're more talking about their process, their accreditations. I think those can be a mask for something that you probably want to avoid. But I don't think they hurt, but not a requirement.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think one of my ways of thinking about the accreditations is these accreditation companies are businesses. And so they have to offer a credential where they can credential anyone. And so they take a least common denominator approach to coaching. And a lot of them focus on more of a Socratic method where they say the coach's responsibility is not to draw from their own experience and advice, but to ask the right questions. And therefore, they don't need to have any requirements for the expertise that you have when you come in and get their certification. And so for me, that's not the type of coaching that I think is the most valuable for a lot of folks. I think you do want someone who has been there, done that to some extent, and can draw from their own experiences as well as help you by asking the right questions. And so I don't think it's a bad thing, but I don't think it's necessary. And just because someone has a credential doesn't mean they're going to be better at the particular type of coaching that you need. If there is a credential that you feel like you do want to look for, My advice is to go to that credentialing company and get an understanding of what their philosophy is around coaching. What do they teach their coaches? How is their approach? A lot of them have YouTube channels, and you can watch mock coaching sessions of them certifying coaches and get a sense of, oh, do I like this style? Do I feel like this is the thing that can help me? If so, great. There's a particular accreditation called Coactive, and that's a approach to coaching that I've seen a lot of people really like. Amazing. Definitely look for someone that's got the Coactive certification. But if you look at the accreditation, you're not that comfortable with their philosophy, or you don't feel like it's solving for what you need, you don't need to look for it. At the end of the day, the things that Matthew and I talked about before, the biggest one being getting referrals, is the best credential to look for.